Hello and welcome to Don't Be a Kook, the podcast with myself, Laura Crane. This podcast is all about allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, which is why I ask each guest what their number one life fail is, or in surfing terms, their number one kook moment. I want to know how they came back from those tough moments and what they learnt along the way. So with a light heart and no filter, welcome to Don't Be a Kook, the podcast. Today's guest is one of the most influential people I've met in my whole life. When I had the idea to start this podcast, it's been one of my dream episodes. This lady gave me my life back. She is a therapist and my therapist. Omara Naseem, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So today the tables have turned and it's me asking you about you. And as I ask every single guest, it's the first question: what is your number one kook moment and how did you come back from it?
So a kook moment is like a difficulty, right? A failure.
Yeah.
And a surfing term, right? I would say, there's been many, right? Like that happens with age now. But I think my main one is being fresh out of uni and thinking about applying for jobs, going for a career job and not getting it, right? So it was all revved up and really thinking like, this is it, I really want this job and it's going to make me, and thinking my life was going to pan out a certain way, and I didn't get it. And along came with that at the time, like drama and feeling like failure, and like it crushed me. But looking back at it now with wise eyes, I can see that it was actually just a redirection towards something that was better for me in that moment. And I think that takes discipline, to look back in the moment. You're just feeling like you're drowning and overwhelmed in like your feelings. And actually I ended up with a job that was different, that was better for me at that time, and then ended up with the job I initially wanted like 10 months later down the line. Like there was so much learning in that, and it was a rich and worthwhile experience. Failure is a part of life, and also I don't really frame it as failure, it's just a necessary thing we have to go through, and it's a redirection towards something else. It really was better for me at that time, but I just had no idea. So, yeah.
That's actually so nice, because I feel that when you think about your therapist going through their life, I think that you just had everything figured out from the time you came like out of your mum's womb. That was just sorted. You just knew everything. So the fact that you've had some little bumps in the road, that makes me feel not so crazy sometimes. But
I've had
that's true.
Many bumps, Laura.
Okay, good. I'm glad you've had bumps. So, pretty much straight into this, but I asked a friend of mine the other day, and we've been talking a little bit about therapy, him and I, and whether or not he would like to go. And I asked him what would be the one thing that would stop you going. And his reply was that he didn't want somebody to know effectively his deepest, darkest secrets and to go out there and start gossiping about them. Now, I'm pretty sure, I'm hoping that you didn't get in this for gossiping about people, but how did you know that you wanted to become a therapist in eating disorder specifically, and how did you even start that journey?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So eating disorder specifically genuinely was an accident. Like it was a placement I went for when I came to London for uni. So there's a lot of education that goes before training to be a psychologist. So I came to London for the last part for the doctorate and was convinced at that point, like this is my calling, this is what I want to do, I'm really passionate about this work. So my intention, the thing that drives me was I went through a period of intense difficulty in my teens. It was about 14, 15. And those years are like crucial, for just being a young person and carefree and figuring out who you are in the world. And I didn't really get to do that. I had to become like almost like a carer myself to one of my parents. And it was a really difficult, hard time in life. I felt alone. I felt like I was in a dark place and I didn't have anyone to confide in or get support. And mental health wasn't talked about the way it is now. And from that, it made me feel like if I could help just one person going through the same thing or something similar and help them feel less alone in that, then my whole career would be worthwhile. So yeah, that's what inspired me. My intention behind it is it's come from that kind of place. So, and it's a difficult career, it's a hard, you hear difficult, hard things and you're helping people through intense, difficult periods of their life, and you have to be passionate about it. You know, I think you have to really want to do this work, and not come into it thinking like it's an easy thing, or definitely not thinking I'm just going to learn about people and have a gossip. Like, absolutely not. You know,
Yeah.
So, you know, we have a code of ethics we apply to, and we do everything very sensibly as psychologists. Yeah.
It's funny because actually my first therapist the only therapist that I had ever been to before you, she looked like the kind of person that was really out there just to gossip. Like, I remember feeling so uncomfortable in her presence. And I remember one of the first things I asked her, actually, and it's funny that I didn't know this about you, but I must have known it when we started talking. And it was the fact that when I asked her, why are you an eating, imagine I was only like 16 to ask her this, asked her why she was a therapist for eating disorders, and she couldn't tell me, she didn't give me a reply. All I wanted to hear was not that she'd had an eating disorder necessarily, but that she had been through something in her life that had made her effectively, literally just what you said, that by you going through what you've been through, you wanted to then help other people. And that's kind of all I wanted to hear from her in that moment. And that I wasn't just somebody that she was looking down on, as in like, you're broken, you're this, you know, that it was a place of sympathy. And I think it's so scary when you're first talking to someone, isn't it? Like to put all your kind of, as he said, my biggest, deepest, darkest secrets out there with a person that I don't know. But it is so important to find the right person, which I can honestly say is, you know, how I'm sat here now and being able to speak about these things so openly is you know, through you. So how would you go about telling people to find a therapist that's safe, that has qualifications, as you said, and that's right for them?
The best predictor of outcome of therapy is the nature of the relationship with your therapist over the modality that you choose. You know, modality, the model of therapy basically is important with eating disorders because you are targeting certain behaviours. It's very specifically managed in terms of risk and medical management too. But if you don't get on with your therapist and you don't like them and you don't trust them, then you're not going to be able to let your guard down and be vulnerable and share things with them that you really need to be able to talk about and share. So you're right, you know, you have to feel safe, you have to feel contained. And it sounds like that's really what you were looking for your first therapist as well, and you were so young at the time. So like, go to someone that you know has experience in the thing that you're seeking help with. So we're talking about eating disorders, right? It could be depression, anxiety, drugs, alcohol misuse, anything like that. But ask them, you know, what is your experience? You know, make sure they're qualified in the thing that you're going to them from to get treatment for. So psychologists, clinical counselling, psychiatrists, you know, we all have protected titles, which means that we've done a specific amount of study and training. We're qualified in treating like a range of mental health disorders. And then if someone's specialised, they've done extra to learn about that particular disorder or specialism. So I think that's super important because there's a lot of people now well-meaning that are out helping and doing things but maybe aren't as qualified as they need to be in specific areas to help with things like risk and medical management, getting blood tests, advising when and how to do that, etc. And meet with them, like have a chat, phone them, ask to go on Zoom with them if you're doing online therapy, and get a sense of how you feel with them. You know, you need to be comfortable. Do you get on? Did you feel like there was a vibe or you were comfortable with them? Did they openly answer your questions without getting defensive, like anyone should? I always offer a call and let people know that you can have a look at my website, you can ask me questions, you know. And if you don't like your therapist and you've started working with them, it's okay to be like, I'm not really feeling this, and have that chat with them. They're going to welcome it, and go find someone else that you do feel comfortable with, right? You can give it a few sessions, you might know from the get-go, but shop around, you know, this is your mental health and well-being, so you can go and, you know, have a look and see who you connect with.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good advice, because I had my first therapy session when I was 17, and it was, I guess, when mum and dad first found out that I had the eating disorder and that I was purging and being sick. And I remember mum literally pulling me up to this lady's house, and when I say crazy cat lady, like, I'll let you do what you want with that. But I walked into the house, like everything felt like just this little cave of just stuff she'd collected, and it was just felt really kind of claustrophobic, and I didn't feel comfortable in there. And I just remember sitting on her sofa and she offered me this like it was a normal cup of tea, but it felt like a weird cup of tea. Like it was just everything about it just didn't feel good. And I had then just kind of like blanketed all therapists that were basically this crazy cat lady that my mum had like found on the internet. Because also this was, I mean, I'm not saying that therapy has probably like changed a lot in that time, I guess. It's been like, what, 10, 15 years? Wow.
It probably has.
Whoa.
Yeah, older than you think,
Jeez.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It has changed, yeah.
But it has changed, and also like the internet is so much more, like it's so much more available now. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
We started ours in lockdown.
Yeah, the start of lockdown.
On Zoom. But I remember just even that first phone call, and I was bawling my eyes down the phone. I felt safe talking to you, which is a big deal. And I'm not sure if it's the same for everybody, but like when I knew I was okay, this person can actually help me.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready to help myself, which is also a pretty big thing. But yeah, I think had I just totally 100% written off therapists, then I probably wouldn't be in this position. So it's like you said, to shop around, and the first one might not work, but the second might be great. The third one might not work, but maybe the 10th one's great. And I think it's just giving yourself that opportunity to find what does work is important. You really, it's true. So I think one of my main reasons for wanting to bring you on here was because I think you're the best therapist in the world because you saved my life, and that's just great. But honestly, when I first met you, every stigma that I had around a therapist, what they should look like, what they should sound like, how they should talk to me, how a conversation should like run in therapy, you just smashed every stigma out of the window, gone. And I think, well, I'm going to tell you actually what really surprised me first.
Okay.
And obviously way different to my crazy cat lady, even though you do have a cat.
I do have a cat, yeah. He makes an appearance in like every session,
yeah. And, which is funny. But I remember, well, I actually first saw you on the documentary with Freddie Flintoff about his eating disorder. Yeah. And my dad was the one that called me, and he was like, I think this lady would be perfect for you, watch it. Watched it, and I was like, oh yeah. She like seems like me, like in the sense of I just felt this strong woman that was cool. Not saying that I'm really cool, but like I felt like you had this kind of like calming, cool, collected kind of vibe, and I was like, I want that. I want to feel like that. Not just I want to like talk to her. I kind of wanted to embody how you were speaking about disordered eating and how calm you were about talking about it, which sounds kind of strange because that's your job to be calm around it. But it was like lots of the things that you were was what really kind of pulled me in. And yeah, I guess I would like to know if you have a stigma that you think that like surround therapists, what that stigma is, and we just crush that right now, right here. Just get rid of that stigma.
So thanks for all the lovely, kind words, because it's the first time like I'm hearing that as well. So it's really interesting to see how people experience it from the other side and how you did. I think people maybe come and think we're going to be really formal and a bit scary and unfeeling and maybe clinical. You know, you get this image of like, I'm going to make you lie on a couch and talk about your childhood and not really say much, or maybe take notes and seem really cold. And analysis, that kind of analysis maybe has its place, but isn't quite like that. You know, that's not what therapy's like. And I think that being authentic is really important, right? Showing up and still being me in a session, chatting with you, you know, and that's maybe what you're kind of sensing or feeling, right? And that might work for certain people and not for others. So that kind of being authentic and genuine and still me, I'm still gonna, everything that whether I share something, it's done for a reason. There's a lot of role modeling that happens as well, and talking about emotions and relationships and everything you're fostering, facilitating within the session is something you're then going to be able to learn, trust, opening up, being genuine, identity, all this kind of work that you do is also something you're taking out into the world after you've learned to do it in therapy, you know, and done that work in there. So I think the preconceived notions might be around being formal and not doing any of that stuff, or being unapproachable, maybe forcing people to go places they don't want to go as well and talk about really difficult things when they're not ready. And I'm glad none of that's actually what's people's experiences are when they work with me, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not what's going to happen. It's collaborative. We do it at your pace. I know what I'm doing with you in terms of the model of work, but we have goals that we're working towards together, and we achieve that. And you're always able to say, like, that doesn't work for me, or can we focus on this today? Or, you're very much part of the process. It's not being done at you. You're doing it together, alongside each other.
No, for sure. That's so true. And actually, it's what my friend that I said when I asked him what would stop him. And he said that it was just like the one-on-one-ness of it and being just in a room. And then I explained to him, we actually didn't, this is the first time that we've met in person, which is insane. Because I feel like, well, lots about me. But it's true. It's that feeling of knowing that you have this friend, that's how I can, the word therapy is quite scary, I think, because of what it means effectively is you're admitting that you've got something that you would like to fix within yourself, or something that you would like to, revisit or whatever, or just get more control over. And I think that, as you said, it's not just what happens in the room, it's going off then and, actually living your life. And for me, it was, I think that the day that I called you, I still remember it like it was yesterday, I was fully rock bottom. I think sometimes takes to hit rock bottom to be like, I really need help. Yeah. And I will always remember that day and calling you and just having kind of so much fear that I wanted to do it and I really wanted to get better, but it was also the fear that if I start this journey and finally accept that I do have something that I want to fix and I can't do it with therapy, then am I really going to be like this forever? And I just, after calling you, I never had that fear again. I knew that I had made a conscious decision to choose myself, and I think doing that with somebody that you trust is so important. That you won't get the right ending, I suppose, that you're looking for unless you're, like you said, doing it together. It's got to be like a team effort. And
you were in the right place, right? You were motivated to make change. You were ready. The fear is normal. Like even your friend's reticence about, I don't know what to expect when I go in, but taking the first step is the brave part. It's the bit that really empowers you, and you're like, I'm scared about giving this thing up, because you probably have a lot of beliefs attached about how it helps you achieve, how it helps you do things, but the fear is normal. Just make that first step and talk to someone, and probably you'll get a sense of, oh, this is doable. Maybe it's not as big as I imagined, or it is a big deal, but maybe it's not as overwhelming. Once you take the first step and take control, that's you actually taking control and empowering yourself to do something about it. Right?
It's so true actually, because I went from having bulimia as my best friend in hyphens, because like you said, from the lifestyle I'd lived since I was so young and I was moving so much, it was this one thing I had control of my whole life, and it kind of teaches you almost that it is your only friend, and without it, like, you don't really have anything, which now looking back is so sad. And I almost want to hug that girl that struggled with bulimia for so long. But then also through kind of learning these things and learning more about yourself, and also learning with therapy, is like the most important thing for me in my journey has definitely been. It's learning that actually, like, you're your own friend, that's kind of what I think that's the main thing that I learned from getting therapy, is that I actually was already my own friend, that I kind of had the answers inside, but I just needed a little bit of help trying to like find where they lined up and stuff. But
like, you already had it there, like you were always your own friend. It's just this thing has come in as a way of coping and managing difficult feelings, or like you said, you were moving around a lot when you were young, you were competing. It wasn't a traditional kind of school experience, just being a teenager, right?
Yeah.
So it became your companion, you know. It's kind of like, I liken it to having like Mean Girls, right? It's like a Regina George figure, your mean best friend. Like, I like you, but I also kind of hate you.
Yeah, that's so good.
You're good to me, but you're also not good to me, but I still want you to like me, and I don't want to let you go. Or like
it's
that.
Like the popular girl at school.
Exactly, right? Like, it's love-hate. And
I know.
Or even for a lot of the young people that I work with now as well, it's like maybe that, or a boyfriend or a partner or a girlfriend that you might have that you know is maybe not the best for you, but you can't quite give them up. It's that kind of vibe,
Yeah,
right? So it's
definitely.
masquerading as something, but everything you need to have is already there. We just need to tap into it and bring it to life, know your worth and building your self-esteem, because you're good enough, so you have good self-esteem, you've got, an eating disorder needs conditions to thrive, but so does your best self and so does your self-esteem. So it's like targeting that stuff, and as soon as you start to feel good about yourself, and going against it, you're getting stronger and stronger as a person, You blossom.
Fighting the good fight.
That's it, exactly. Yeah.
And it's honestly the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, even till this day. Fighting and winning against bulimia is still the gnarliest thing I've ever done.
It's major. It's a huge achievement.
Dude, it's so intense.
And you did it.
It's like the biggest achievement in my life still. Like after everything, it's definitely my like proudest thing is that I had the courage to do it.
Good. And you should be proud. It's major.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. Okay, so after our sessions, I always kind of used to feel a little bit guilty. No, guilty is probably the wrong word.
Really?
But because the more that we used to talk, I kind of, it was like, for my friend Omara, that we just chat and, she just listens to me moan about all the things that I'm kind of getting confused with or whatever. And the reason I used to feel like slight guilt was because I used to think, well, who does she talk to? Like, who helps Omara when, I'm crying down the phone and telling her how rubbish I've been this week and that I've, stopped myself eating because of a stress or all these little things. And this has played on my mind. No one else might care about this, but do therapists get therapy? And do you feel it's quite hard sometimes to like separate your, your empathetic self so that you can like go about your day and like then pop to Tesco after you've done a session? Is it quite hard to kind of leave that there and be work and then carry on about your day?
Yeah. I mean, that might be another thing that tags onto the preconceived idea that like some people might think, you just come and do a job and then you leave and that's it. But actually no, like people stay with you. If someone's had a hard session, I'm a bit concerned for them and I might check in with them. I'll let everyone know, look, if you're having a hard time, you can get back in touch. It's okay. But I think I've got over the years, like just know how to take care of myself that way with like practices, rituals, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's going for a walk, playing with Milo, my cat who jumps in on every session. Like there's just a way that you get good at knowing like if this is intense, I'm going to take some time and not rush into another session or take care of myself. But it's really sweet. It's really nice to think like you're caring about me in that sense as well. So thank you. But therapists getting therapy, yes, not everyone does, but this is a different fork in the road as well for clinical psychologists and counselling. So my background as a counselling psychologist meant that my training route required that we get therapy. So we had it amounts to a ridiculous amount of hours, almost I think 200 or something, or maybe more than that in total over your years of study, like the 3-year course. And I know clinical psychs, maybe this has changed now, but it's not a requirement, but they can go and do it. So I'm really glad that was part of our training, right? Because I then get to understand what it feels like to be, in the chair and sharing and how difficult that is, but also as a form of self-care, because you're going to touch on things that will affect me too, I'm human, I go through things, or if like you say you get upset about something, so I still will go to therapy and take care of myself that way as and when things come up as a form of self-care. Yeah. And I think it helps you with healthy boundaries, it helps you know when to go and get that help, and it's really good in training, but also just for me as a practice to continue throughout life, and also practice what you preach, right? Go and do that thing as well. And there's another thing that we have called clinical supervision, which is like you'll have someone who's like also qualified and they might have a slightly different form of therapy that they practice, but you go and you have case discussions and we'll talk clinically about the work. And that can be quite helpful as well to help guide the professional direction of the work and share ideas and different ways of working. But also just sometimes it can be really useful to get the peer support from other people as well around any difficult, feelings that come up too with cases. Yeah, we're not impervious to feeling emotion about our clients. I think about people, I hold people in mind, but also I'm not like being overwhelmed by that. Yeah.
Because I think actually that's one of the nicest things that I felt when we started talking was that you had like emotion like with me, that you weren't just, as you said, the preconceived idea of someone just sitting there with a clipboard and being like, Yes.
In a suit, really
You're
stuffy.
fucked. Like, no, that wasn't what it was at all. You were like, you know, you had empathy. You were like, okay, this is actually really heavy what you've been through, Laura. This is something that, you know, you're allowed to feel this way. And for me, it was just pure validation that actually what I have been through isn't just, you know, something to shrug off, that I do need to go through these things, and that I have reason to have been in this situation that I'm in. And I think that was, well, I guess, it's easy to have those kinds of conversations with people when you feel comfortable, you know, and that's obviously because you've, like you said, been in the same positions in certain senses, and you've done the work already. So,
and that is the work. It's the relating. It's the relational aspect of therapy. Is actually, I'm meeting you as a human in that moment and being alongside you in the emotion, and also reflecting that. You know, I feel pain, I feel sadness, I feel that stuff with you. You know, and also, like you say, I'm not unfeeling or stuffy. Like, I'm in the trenches with you, and we'll figure it out, you know, and that's important. The work you're doing is about connection and healing. So in relationship, we heal, and that's exactly what we're doing at the crux of therapy.
Definitely, and it's that little word you said, that we're in the trenches, we'll do this together. It was like, I felt like I'm not alone, you know. I am doing this, you know, internally alone, but actually I'm not doing this alone now. My parents know, Omara knows, like all these, you know, and it's that kind of, it's not feeling alone. It's what everyone talks about, isn't it? To speak about your feelings, it will get easier. And it's true, because, you know, you might get some terrible unsolicited advice from mates, but actually along the road, you will at some point figure it out, because it's, you know, you start sharing things, what other people are learning. And it's so true. So as I said, I still remember that first day that I called you, and I remember feeling so scared, so scared, because I'd always had this thought in my head that if I do now go and get therapy at this age, I was 23 or 24, and it doesn't work this time, I am really gonna have to live my life with bulimia just running the show forever. That's how I thought it was. It was just so cut and dry. It was either bulimia, no in between, no journey, just that.
Black and white.
Yeah,
right, yeah.
And then I called you, and it really was because I was at rock bottom. I was like, I can't carry on like this. I don't know what else to do. Like, definitely had suicidal thoughts. And from that moment of having that hysterical girl just calling down the phone, I've always wondered how, from that moment where it just seemed so out of control, and I had literally zero control at that point, from that moment, how did you know what I needed, like, in that moment? And also just from there to, like, obviously our first then therapy session, what treatment I would need in like the coming months?
Sure. It's funny, I don't remember you being hysterical on the phone. I remember you being emotional and, like, obviously in a hard place, feeling like intensely in a difficult spot, but not like the way you make it sound as if you were some sort of banshee.
That's pretty hysterical for me.
Like, I'm sure it was hysterical and really intense, but it's not how, you know, for me it didn't feel like.
Okay, that's good.
I was like, oh my gosh, she's struggling, she needs help. Okay, let's do what we can here. And yeah, so it didn't, I get how you're conveying it, but for me it felt like it's not something I'm used to hearing people in distress as well. I'm helping you through that. So it was like, okay, so you were talking about bulimic symptoms, right? So in my head, you know, we have this model of, these are the models that we use are evidence-based for treating particular disorders. So for bulimic and binge eating presentations, it's the cognitive behavioural therapy model. And also, I don't actually like doing a lot of group work. I prefer working one-on-one with people because it really lets me tailor an individualised treatment for you, right? So then as we did our assessment, you know, I learned a lot about you, your history, learn about the function behind the behaviours in the disorder, and then as we have sessions, you're the one that teaches me, you know, about you, and I've learned further about the disorder and its place and how to kind of, you know, whether anxiety shows up too and how that's connected, whether there's mood issues in there, whatever it is. I learn as we go along working together, and then tailor, you know, certain things we focus on, bring in mindfulness, bring in other body-based interventions and things. So it's CBT plus these other elements getting weaved in according to what I feel you need, you know. And at the crux of it, again, the work is collaborative and it's relational, you know. So yes, we do homework, that model of therapy of, right, these are the things we're targeting with CBT, you know, thinking styles, behaviour, we're going to do homework once a week. And I remember you weren't a fan of the written homework.
I hate school, you know this, Omar.
So that's fine. So then it was like a thing to do, right? Whether that was listening to a podcast or trying to do something different for me, you know, like trying a fear food or eating a sandwich and seeing that nothing bad happens, or, you know, being assertive and communicating needs, all that kind of stuff. So in my head is like the clinical part that's like, this is the model of therapy that I know will help, but then also it's individually tailored and finessed as we go along according to what you tell me and what you bring up, and what I'm shown in therapy is the stuff there. Where did the wounding happen? Where do we need to go to help repair this, right? And we can also only go where you're willing to go, where you're motivated to go in that space of time. So that also helps pace the work. I don't know if that does that answer?
No, that was absolutely amazing, because I remember here when you first said, okay, we're going to do this CBT therapy, which is the cognitive behavioural therapy. Look at me.
Yeah. Well done.
And I remember you like talking me through it, and I think I was in like still kind of, as much as I wanted the help, there's an element at the start, I think you're kind of like still fighting it a little bit. You're definitely like resisting. I definitely did for like a little bit at the start, I remember, because you were like, hey, this is the homework, and I was like, no, can't do that, don't like computers. And you're like, okay, well, here's a book, write it. And I was like, okay, I can probably
you like
do
the
that.
journaling.
And then I've always journaled, so for me that felt like familiar and safe, and those things. So it's not someone telling you what to do. It's okay, this is what would work in this way, maybe.
Yeah, let's find a way together, right? If
exactly.
this doesn't work, that's fine. Tell me what you can do. Tell me what will work. And also, I like to know what music you listen to, what do you watch on Netflix, how do you spend your time? So it helps me understand how to pitch things too, right? How do I relate to you? How do I get, what do you like doing with your time? And also, how do I connect with you that way? So I always ask people, you know, things like, you know, like the sports, for example, as a connection, music, things you like doing socially. They're all ways in, and it also helps understand just how to connect with you and get you engaged in doing something too, because if you're interested in it, you're going to follow up and do it, right? So journaling worked, and that's been a really good habit for you.
Yeah. Journaling still till this day, man.
Good, excellent.
Something that actually really surprised me when I first started kind of just like digging into just eating disorders as a whole was that they can come up in so many different ways. So you've got obviously like the ones that everybody thinks of, the bulimia, the anorexia. And I was so shocked that a form of bulimia, which I have also suffered with probably like the earlier stages of my eating disorder, was that you can, you know, purge, not always having to be through being sick, it can be through going to the gym or something, which kind of makes so much sense because it is the same thing. But what are the other kind of avenues and ways that eating disorders can come up that maybe people wouldn't think are so, you know? Do
you mean like the different kind of ways of like how to talk about bulimic behaviours that people might do?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, in what way can an eating disorder show up that might not be the kind of generic way of imagining an eating disorder?
No, that's a good question, right? So especially in the post-pandemic, everyone went through a phase of like, well, I'm seeing a lot more of this kind of presentation, the clean eating kind of thing, and the orthorexia, which isn't like diagnostic criteria here. Orthorexia isn't like, I'm sure it probably will be at some time a diagnosable condition, but that, you know, clean eating, calorie counting, tracking, everyone started trying to just be a bit healthier, and then it kind of, people get validation, they feel good, it manages anxiety, great, and then they just keep doing a thing and keep going until, and then it's like problematic, right? We're in the disordered realm when it gets too much. So I think noticing people's obsession with maybe like fads that I kind of say, like, for example, what are we in now? We've come out of keto phase, and now it's like intermittent fasting is a thing everyone wants to talk about. And yes, that has a place and is valuable, and you should speak to people who have lots of knowledge and are qualified to give advice on this if you want to do it. And doing anything to the extreme is a problem, right? Because that's healthy if it's a part of your lifestyle and you're kind of doing this in a measured way. So, you know, clean eating, anything to do with counting and tracking, diet mentality, these are like windows into kind of disordered behaviour quite quick. They create a lot of preoccupation, you know, social media misuse, lots of negative comparisons, you just things like that I think are early warning signs to look out for. So clean eating. Other behaviours might be if someone's like isolating themselves, not interested in the things they normally were interested in doing. You just see them maybe not coming for meals or getting obsessed about quantities, maybe filling up on protein or protein shakes and bars rather than wanting meals or meal replacement stuff. So I think, if you're around someone who's doing that, don't be afraid to ask, is everything all right? I've noticed there's been a change, I think that's the main thing. Like, approach people if you see some change in their behaviour or eating habits or a change in personality. No one's going to get angry that you care and you're asking them how they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually really interesting, what you're saying about since the pandemic, that we've all kind of swayed more towards these, like, eating healthy as much as that's a really important thing. It's the obsessiveness around it, isn't it? It's about how much of your day is consumed with thinking about, like, what is it? Is like whether it's your food, whether it's your appearance, like all these things. Because mine was definitely like a mix of the two. It was the pressure to look a certain way, but it was also, I liked the control I had when I had such a out of control life, it felt like at that time. So it is, I guess, the same as the pandemic, isn't it? Everyone felt out of control, so they wanted something to control, and then as time's gone.
That's the ultimate feeling in control of what you put in your body, what you don't, the feeling that weight loss and a sense of achievement, all that was giving, and then the validation from others that you look good, or what people were getting. So absolutely, that was a time when everyone felt out of control. We were all like in it together, not knowing how to cope. It was a very difficult time. And you're snatched out of your world, and all your coping mechanisms are taken away. So it was, creating a lot of conditions for an eating disorder to thrive. Right?
It was, not a good time for eating disorder, that's for sure. Today's podcast is brought to you by a product I now could not live without. Alensia Protein is the world's first vegan protein peptide gel, making 100% protein absorption possible. I've seen such a difference in my energy levels, recovery and focus since taking it, and I've literally forced everybody close to me to get on it too. Alensia Protein is sustainably sourced and has more protein per gram than any other protein products to help us keep doing what we love for longer. Thanks, Alensia. I think I have personally seen that there's quite a strong correlation with eating disorders and athletes, especially since I've been in recovery and speaking a lot more about it honestly rather than how I used to try and hide it. I think one of the main reasons I did try and hide it was because of that, was because I didn't want people to see I had kind of this, not that it's a weakness, but I saw it as a weakness.
And shame as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to hide it. I didn't want people to know. And that kind of correlation between athletes and disordered eating, why do you think that is? What is that like link?
Yeah, it's the focus on the body, like needing to be a certain weight or shape, the focus on leanness. People who are in jobs or professions where they are a lot more concerned with body weight and shape and size, they're much more predisposed to having disordered eating and eating disorder habits. So it's rife in dancers as well, like you say, athletes, gymnasts, people that have to make certain weight bands and things. There's all the pressure, models, actors, so these professions where you're very focused on appearance, it's unfortunate. But then there'll be demands like you need to make a certain weight band, for example. So then there'll be a time period, and then you'll be counting, tracking, getting lots of pressure, the pressure of everything that's going on around you to achieve, your training, your exercise. All that is super stressful if we think from a perspective of being healthy and going into that environment and not having any kind of vulnerability factors or predisposing factors to developing an eating disorder or mental health, condition. It would put enough strain on someone to possibly like go down a route where suddenly we've got anxiety, and it creates a lot of preoccupation and obsessional focus on something that you wouldn't normally be doing, right? And it might be short, sharp space of time, but for athletes, like it's not just a few weeks. You're in it for quite a lot of time, and it's again the conditions are being given to you, and it's been encouraged, and there's been a lot of support maybe to help people, but maybe not spot the signs that they're actually on a slippery track and they are struggling. Like coaches and teammates now are probably a lot better versed at spotting these signs and getting in there and helping people quite early on. Like, we're worried about you, we're concerned, let's do this in a safe way.
Yeah.
But there's a huge amount of pressure, and there's very different conditions.
For sure. Even since I've, I would say, at what age, like 15, 16, there was no help for that. They were not, no one cared about that back then.
Yeah, it's world back then.
Yeah, no, and it is nice to see. It is nice to see that there is more support for it, definitely, because, has to be.
But unfortunately, it still happens, like it's still a long way.
It's
come a long way, but there's still a way to go as well.
100%. So I guess on the other side of having athletes that struggle with it, everyone struggles with disordered eating. I think even just my friends, I think the more understanding I have now of disordered eating, and that not necessarily having to be, at the lengths that I had my eating disorder, but if you have a friend or a family member that you are potentially worried about, and as you said before, just to ask somebody are you okay? Is everything okay? Is probably a nice way of doing it. I do remember that when I first kind of got found out by my parents that I'd had bulimia, my dad caught me being sick, and I was just in total denial. I was so petrified that somebody was going to take this thing away from me. Right. And it's kind of back to the best friend thing that I was saying, that I was like, no, I haven't. And I got really angry towards my parents for accusing me of having this thing that I said that I didn't have, or, you kind of get caught up in the lies and stuff like that. So if you're, as I said, a friend or a family member is, that you think they're struggling, what would be your ways of going about it and asking them how they're doing, or just, maybe trying to push them in a direction of getting help or something? Sure,
it's tricky. I think the biggest thing you can do is maybe try and talk to them when maybe do something with them that they enjoy doing. Try and approach the person when they are calm and relaxed and their defences are down. Prepare yourself, maybe do some reading and get some knowledge about what could they be suffering from, or how to talk about eating disorders. I can put some stuff in my Insta, and Beat Eating Disorders have some nice information on their website. But approach gently. Talk to them about maybe you're concerned for them, you've noticed differences in their behaviour, you're just worried about them, is there anything going on? So you don't even have to mention food, right? You can if you feel that you want to, but I think that just helps someone say, actually, maybe I'm having a tough time, there's things going on, I'm struggling. And you could be like, I care for you, that's why I'm saying it, I don't want to nag, but I'm worried, I've noticed there's been a change in your behaviour, you're not quite yourself. Whether that's you don't sit with us at dinner, or maybe you just seem like your health is maybe suffering a bit at the moment. Yeah. And see how they respond. And if there's a flare up and they don't want to talk, it may be okay, we can come back to this at another time. And the trick there is not to get into button heads or no, I seen you and you did this. And so just diffuse and come back to again. That person will go away and think about it, and then probably be more receptive the next time. Mm-hmm. And also for people to offer as well, if you don't want to talk to me, is there someone else you want to talk to? Maybe do you want to text me what's going on if you don't want to have a conversation that's face to face? Sometimes the younger people prefer that, it's less confronting. Yeah. Shall we go to the doctor and get a checkup? There's no harm in doing that together. And sometimes maybe even getting some literature or reading, or let's look at this Instagram together, or look at this website. Does any of this seem familiar? Can you relate to any of this that's going on? I mean, what do you think would have been better for you?
To be honest, I think when my parents first found out, I'd probably had bulimia for already a year. I was 16, and I didn't want help. I liked it. I enjoyed having it in the moment, and I felt kind of, that it gave me this kind of empowered feeling after I was sick. And in hindsight, obviously it was just a form of self-harm. But in that moment, it felt like a high, and it felt like something that kind of gave me a bit of a hit. So I didn't want to lose it.
Right, yeah.
But I think later down the line, there was a time when I was 21, and I had just moved home from Indonesia. I was really, really ill at this point. I would say it was more leaning towards anorexia really than the bulimia at that point, because it was a bit less about the purging and stuff. It was just about being less, being smaller and being skinny. And I think in that moment I did want help, because I came home and I was ready to start speaking to somebody. But it was this overwhelming feeling of like all of a sudden I'm back in my parents' house, which was quite a triggering place, not because they weren't caring, they didn't want to be there, but it was because I knew they knew. Right. And I knew that they wanted me to get better, and it was kind of this pressure to do something that I wasn't sure whether I could do. I thought I'd fail at it if I tried to get better. So it's so hard to know what to say, but I think exactly what you said, just, you know, my parents never gave up. And they kept saying, like, when you're ready, we will be here, you know, and they didn't, they never gave up. And, you know, I have to take my hat off to them, because I can't imagine how hard it is for them to, you know, watch their daughter go through that and feel helpless. But it's just not giving up and just being there. And even though must be so just hard to understand if you're not in it. I really difficult. Now looking back, I'm like, it is confusing. Even it confuses me that I was even in that frame of mind. So for a parent or a friend to try and understand is really tough. But yeah, just to keep enforcing that you will be there for them when they are ready. Is I think
that's a really nice point as well, friend. When watching, like, you don't have to understand, you don't have to get the ins and outs of it. You don't need to be an expert. But, you know, you can connect with just like, I care and I'm worried and I'm here for you, I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, you know, I can help in any way that I can. Let me know how to help. You know, that's important too.
For sure. But yeah, it's hard, like I said, hard on the other side. Like, I have friends now that I'm kind of trying to, you know, be there for them in the same way my friends were for me. And it is hard, because you also think once you've had therapy, you go through this kind of like, you know, the saviour zone that I really went through super hard and tried to save every single person in my path. And it was that kind of thing of like, oh, I've learned all these things now and I can save all these people. And I thought I was the next Omara, but I wasn't. But it's that, isn't it? It's feeling like, you know, you can help someone, but actually you're not in their mind. So, you know,
you can help them as much as they're able to help themselves in that moment, right? And be a guide, and just like what your parents did for you when you were ready, you were able to take that step forward, right? And I think it's important to mention as well here, like, ambivalence is like a part of an eating disorder, that half in, half out. Like, I kind of know there's a problem, but I don't want to do something about it. So, like, that is a part of the pathology, that's part of the picture of an eating disorder. It's one of the symptoms that we recognise. Like, when someone comes to get help, they are half in, half out. Usually someone's helped them get there, and they're like, half, I don't really want to be here. Like, I've got this under control, you know, it's not really that bad, you know, I've been worse. And, you know, that's normal, and that's a part of what we treat. Is that ambivalence of, like, we're thinking about motivation to change, right? Like, what's the pros and cons of this? Or, like, there are pros, otherwise your disorder wouldn't be around, but also what's the cons, and where do you want to be in a year's time? Could you imagine still being in this position? And it's helping, galvanise that motivation in people, right? We want to, like, start a little fire or this little twinge of, like, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't good and I do want to change. But don't think because you're kind of unsure that means you're not ready for help either. Like, that's a part of the picture of, like, the way that we understand people who are depressed feel not motivated to do anything. That's a part of depression, right? So ambivalence is a part of an eating disorder where you're like, I know this is bad, but kind of I'm all right with it.
It's like the self-harming, isn't it? You know that it's not good for you, you know it's hurting you, it's stopping you getting where you want to get to, but you keep it because it's like there's this wall, this like kind of barrier. It's so true. Trauma. This is something that I've kind of been like looking into more recently. Even read a book on it the other day, which was so unlike me.
Oh, well done. Finally, now you're reading books.
I know. It's called What Happened to You by Oprah Winfrey, and it's like a talk with her and her therapist. It's like an ongoing conversation.
Is there anything that women won't publish? Go ahead.
It's great. It's like it's mad, but it's really good because it's like it's just a general conversation about trauma and how it kind of like affects you later on in life if you don't have these things you do. I came to you probably about a year ago with some trauma that I had like felt was kind of arising, that I'd buried for a really, really long time. And I think when I really look back to it, it's probably, as you said at the start, you always kind of look for that pinnacle moment where the, you know, trauma and stresses start to happen. I would definitely say that the trauma that kind of rose its head like last year was a really big one for me to overcome, and still not like fully sorted, but we're opening the box. And I feel like everyone's kind of talking about trauma at the moment and how important it is to like dig it up and go really far into it and relive the situation that you were in.
Oh.
Yeah, I've listened to a few podcasts recently, and that's kind of why I want to ask this question. How delicate is this?
Extremely.
Trauma?
Handle with care. Fragile, right?
Because I think the level of trauma, like I read this actually in the book, and it says what trauma is actually classed as, and people say, oh, well, these kids now that were in the pandemic, for instance, that didn't get to go to prom, that's a trauma. And then when I'm comparing my trauma to it, which obviously you shouldn't really do anyway, is comparing trauma to other people's and things, I was then thinking, well, maybe mine isn't trauma, maybe mine's something way worse than trauma, and it's these things. So obviously not to compare your trauma is important, but where would you say digging your own trauma up and going through it and trying to figure out where it's come from and what it is in your own kind of educated way is safe, and when would you say that it's a time that you need to get professional help to dig it up?
I think like when the person's ready, right? Because it could be that I'm working with someone and I know there's probably been something going on, but you might ask some gentle questions to gauge, how much is in this person's awareness, right? And if they're ready to go there, not willing, and also I would genuinely wait, knowing a person, understanding their history, that when something becomes because trauma can get blanked out from the mind and body for a reason, right? And then it might start to show up at some point because it's been activated or that word triggered. So when the person is ready, right, and when they're able to do that work, and often you maybe have to do some preparatory work to get them ready to do the work, right? You can't just take someone to a difficult place and they'll get distressed and they'll become very dysregulated. And not prepared how to deal with that, right? They might not know how to soothe themselves after. So it's irresponsible. You can't take someone into a traumatic place, you'll have to prepare them, work towards, do they want to do this work? What's the aim of it? What are they comfortable with? And there's different ways of addressing trauma, different types of therapy. There's non-talking therapies like EMDR, body work, somatic work. There's talking therapies too. So I think go to someone who is, trained in these modalities and thinking about how to handle with care. You want to go to someone who knows how to work with trauma, because it's a different way of working with it than just maybe talking about being a little bit anxious, etc.
Yeah.
You want to know that you're ready for it. You want to know you want to do it. And it's also a case of maybe knowing it has to be at your pace. And if it's interfering with daily life and functioning, you're having flashbacks, it's interfering in relationships or friendships, there's things coming up, then it would probably be like, oh, maybe there's something that I need to look at here or take to therapy and gently address and talk about and pace that kind of, are we moving towards this and how do we do it? And everything has to be done safely and you have to be equipped to deal with that. So going into it, knowing that you're going to feel distressed, what to do when I feel distressed, how do I become dysregulated and regulate again, soothe and feel okay after session. It's something you plan and do in quite a considered way. And there's different forms of therapy and ways of doing that, and it's finding what one connects with you, what one feels like something you'd want to engage with too. And this, we shouldn't compare anything about ourselves with anyone, right? But we fall into that trap, especially now with social media. But there was this old-fashioned way of looking at big T trauma and little T trauma, and of that. We think about things like rape and assault as big trauma, and little trauma is maybe I don't know what that would be. I think, it's trauma is something that's that has had an impact on you, that you define that it was traumatic for you, right? So it's developmental trauma. Someone not, the pandemic was traumatic for everyone in a way, and for kids that didn't get to go to school and form relationships, and were online all the time. They've missed out on certain things there. But it's not saying that that's more traumatic or this is less traumatic. It's valid. Your experience is valid. Your trauma is valid. And how, don't label it. Just try and just go with it into therapy. And validating yourself isn't an easy thing, right? So doing it, learning compassion in therapy with another and being witness to that and moving through it and building a base of feeling good within yourself again and processing it is important. So it's. If you feel like it's something valid for you, then it's valid. Yeah,
definitely. Would you say that the growth in social media use has played a big part in the amount of people that are now dealing with eating disorders?
Yes, I would say that. And there's studies there to back up, like the more visual-based ones are the ones that cause a bit more, that are more impactful in a negative way on mental health, like Instagram. It also depends on like how someone's using it, right? It's not just, you can use something for good and for bad, but people who have eating disorders are much more likely to negatively compare themselves with others. This is a behaviour that's much more pronounced in people with eating disorders. So social media lends itself to that you're automatically seeing this highlight reel of someone's life that's filtered, that's staged. Often it's someone's business, right? And we're looking at it and just thinking, oh, they're on holiday in the Maldives and that looks beautiful and they look great, and like I'm at my coffee, like just with my coffee at my desk, like in cold London, like not living the dream. Or, you know, we get into these kind of mindsets of comparing and thinking we're less than. So if you're already vulnerable, you have issues with self-esteem, or you're just, you know, a bit fragile about yourself, this is a medium where you're constantly being encouraged to see something that's not quite reality and compare and then feel inadequate, right? So yeah, that's rife. TikTok, the algorithms also targeting you. If you look at something that's maybe not so great, and then you're boom, 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 and you're constantly seeing fitness stuff or food stuff or modelling things or pictures that are triggering. So we also do, like, in the work that I do with people, there's targeting social media use as well, how to clean it up, how to use it in a positive way, how to take breaks and set healthy limits, reset the algorithms as well. So I want you to click that something's not relevant and start looking at puppies and kittens and fluffy ducks and get suggesting other things to you, and click yes, yes, and we tidy up the feed. Because even if your day is going well and you pick up your phone and you see something that, you know, you quickly compare, or it makes you feel bad about yourself in some way, that's then turns your mood and can lead you down a shame spiral or get you thinking about things that aren't so good for you, and you're in a hole and you're in a rut and you're chasing that, right? There's that domino chain effect of just thinking poorly and you're off on a track. Whereas if you didn't go on your phone and that didn't happen, you'd be getting on with your day.
Yeah.
You know, so absolutely TikTok is a major one, and Instagram, what you're looking at, what's fed out there, you know, like it's major. You know, people are vulnerable in using them and spending a lot more time online and exposing themselves to content as well, and there's a healthy way to learn to use it, but it's a worry.
Definitely. But that's so interesting about the algorithm, because I can always tell if I've been neglecting my mental health a little bit, because my algorithm will be like bikini babes looking super hot, like you said, loads of fitness stuff. And then if I've been journaling, I've been keeping up on my stuff, it'll be more just inspirational quotes, like some nice sunset, like an inspirational quote behind a video. Like I can always tell if I'm like on my game or I'm off my game because of my algorithm. But that's actually really interesting. I didn't even know that you could control it. I'm on that. So I'm going to fluffy puppies and quotes.
Yeah, that's it. Just start talking into it and it'll start suggesting it later to you. But hit irrelevant or, you know, not appropriate, whatever it is, it'll start suggesting, because it's picking up all your information and trying to engage you. You know, it's very clever. So when you're vulnerable or you're feeling down, you're just going to click things that, you know, go down that spiral. So actually doing it when you're not vulnerable or you're in a better frame of mind, and tidy up your feed, follow positivity stuff, and hit irrelevant, see what happens.
I like that. That's really good advice. I'm even going to do that on my phone when I get home. I like that a lot.
Good.
I think looking back on my eating disorder, if it was like on a timeline, it definitely kind of looked lots of different ways as it evolved into what it was. At the start, it was definitely just solely calorie counting, restricting food, not eating as much as I thought that would make me fat, which seems, now when I say it,
now mental, it feels illogical, right?
Yeah, but it's, in the moment it seemed like it was the most sane thing to do. How many different ways can bulimia show up?
So many, right? Everyone thinks of the traditional way of, there's binge eating, there's restricting, and then there's being sick, like self-induced vomiting, purging. So people tend to think that's what it looks like. And I think through doing the documentary, people learned actually, you know, it's the binging and a compensatory behaviour that's designed to influence your weight or shape, right? There's a preoccupation, doing something like over-exercising, being sick is a part of it, but now as well there's all the diuretic type things like diet teas, meal replacement stuff, using laxatives, all the different forms of that. It can be amphetamine use, it could be drug misuse, like using things to influence weight or shape. So one of the new ones will be things like Ozempic Saxenda, these kind of Wegovy, these medications that are designed to help people lose weight, but they can be abused, right? So that could be seen as a form of purging now too. For something that's a bit more common in the LGBTQI plus community would be anabolic steroid misuse as well, which you see in a lot of men. The more another complex one is diabulimia, so someone might be using their insulin to purge and influence and manipulate weight loss too. So it's also screening people and understanding, like, why are you doing that? What are you using this to lose weight, to not get fat or gain weight, you know?
So the bulimia is actually the need to kind of use something external to get like skinnier or
to influence your weight and shape.
Okay.
Yeah, usually we'll use, for example, we'll talk about getting thin, right? Most people are showing up and saying, I'm afraid of getting fat, I'm doing all this stuff to stay a certain weight, and actually have to educate them that actually being sick is making your weight fluctuate. It's not helping you stay slim or lose weight, and this is all the harm it's doing to your body. Same with all the other behaviours too. It's only when we work on reducing all that behaviour, so essentially not restricting, not binging, not doing any of those compensatory things. So when you're there, you'll see your weight will stabilise. And before it's going like this, probably because of all the other stuff that's going on, but you're not learning that because you're so in the disordered behaviour, right? So what I have to teach you is to not use any disordered behaviours, which is super hard, to see that everything stabilises, you know, and then you go from there. Like, that's the baseline. What do we need to do when we're here?
Yeah.
And that's complex. You know, you're doing all your emotional regulation, teaching healthy strategies for managing emotions, learning to not use behaviours, almost like detoxing from them, right? Yeah. There's a lot of facing fears involved in all of that. But yeah, like if we were to do a chart, like weight's probably going like this because of all that stuff. So only when you learn to give it up, which you're facing a fear because you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get big if I don't do it. And then I've got to get you to do that thing to learn that's not true.
Yeah, and it's so true. Like my weight in the last 2 years since I started recovery has been the most consistent same size I've been my whole life. And I eat more food than I've ever eaten. I probably work out, not less, but in a more, I now work out to get strong. Yeah. I don't care about what I look like
it's not
when I'm working
doing cardio,
out.
Right?
No, exactly. Yeah. And I would say I still care about what I look like. Obviously, it is still part of my job to feel like I would like to still, you know, look a certain way. And I, rather than just wanting to be skinny, I now just want to perceive strength.
Strong,
And like you said before, if you could help one person, that's always what my thing was it was to, you know, I want to be somebody for 15-year-old Laura to have looked up to and to be like, oh, okay, it's all right to have big shoulders. You're doing okay.
It's good to squat and have muscle, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's another thing we maybe not touched on earlier is the preoccupation is something, it's indicative of like an eating disorder, right? If you're constantly preoccupied with thoughts about your weight, your shape, your appearance, and that can present as counting calories, like what am I going to eat? I'm so worried. You're constantly thinking about food and weight and how you look. Like that's one of the key like indicators we look for as well alongside diagnosing an eating disorder. Yeah. So if like 80 or 90%, a huge percentage of your day is lost in those kind of thoughts, that's one of the things we're looking for as well and screening for. And that's also a clear sign that usually someone's not eating enough. It's a sign of semi-starvation, which maybe sounds really extreme, but really it just means you're dieting and not eating enough of what you need. So your body and your mind are driving you to think about how to get fuel. Yeah. And actually that goes away by doing the very thing that you're scared of, which is eating enough. Yeah. Right,
and it's so funny that you say, because at the start when I say you gave me my life back, it really is that. It's to actually be able to think for yourself and not be totally just bombarded with thoughts of food, calories, what's my Apple Watch saying, like, oh God, someone's going to see I've just eaten that. All these thoughts that just kind of stop you from getting where you actually want to be going. So it's so much more than just eating and being sick or not eating, or you know, it's mad.
It's like living with Regina George 24/7, right? She's just saying nothing but horrible things and for some reason you're believing them, right?
Literally Regina George, that is exactly what an eating disorder is, just this bitch, man. Some advice for somebody who's listening to this today, who knows they need to get help, is maybe not ready to take the leap yet. But just some steps that you can take before actually, you know, making the decision to go and speak to somebody professional.
Okay, I'd say tell someone, tell anyone that you trust, that you care about, cares about you, friend, family, parent. Just tell someone, because you need to lift the lid of shame. Shame keeps it going, it keeps it undercover. You're gonna probably still continue with it. So just letting someone know that you're struggling or something going on that you might need help with. And then when you're ready, tell a medical professional, because this will be impacting on your health. You won't understand that there'll be an impact on your organs, how your brain is functioning, your bone density. You might be going through bone loss at a crucial time when you need to be, growing that. We lose the window of that opportunity at some point. So there's all these medical things as well. So talk to someone, tell someone. Remember, early intervention is key. The earlier we get in there to treat it, the less chance of it being like long-term entrenched, damaging, like the habits it's easy just to get in there and change everything quickly, right? Mm-hmm. We want that with any kind of mental health condition, but the longer you leave an eating disorder untreated, the worse it's going to be and harder it is to kind of make change. It can still happen, but it can take longer. So within the first 3 years, ideally. So also try not to wait and think, I've got a hold of this and it'll be all right. So I'm not that bad, it doesn't matter. Whatever's going on is valid. Tell someone you care about, then make plans to get help, right? Yeah. Have a look at the right websites like Beat. I answer questions when people send me messages and think, where do I go to get help? Your GP, and if they're not listening to you, often getting someone on board to help, what to say, and you're entitled to that help. Mm-hmm. Sometimes GPs don't know what they're looking for, or to refer to a specialist unit. You're not alone, you're absolutely not alone in this. Lots of people are going through difficulty and have been where you've been and got better. Yeah. This is temporary, you will get better, you won't feel like this forever. And if there's dietary change, if you know that you're restricting and actually you can start to stop doing that or eat things that feel more comfortable, choose things that you're okay with and have more of them, that would be great, right? Because actually, the brain's function, its ability to function properly changes, its structure changes when you restrict. So there's actually, nutritional change is a part of what we need to target as well in treatment. So my first thing is tell someone, please, then get professional help as soon as possible. Don't let it fester. And you will get better and feel like yourself again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the you will get better. I think when you are in the trenches of like the worst of the worst time, it genuinely feels like you will never ever be able to see any light out at the end of the tunnel. But I can hand on my heart say, like, if you want it enough and you do the work and you really, really want it, like even in the days where you don't think you want it, if deep down you still want it, you can do it for sure. And it's hard, but it's worth it, I promise.
And you're capable of doing the hard work, right? It takes a lot of determination, stubbornness, motivation. These are really good traits to have, but when they're driven into an eating disorder, it's like a negative expression of them, right? So being a perfectionist or detail focused is good in the right context. Being driven and motivated is good in the right context. So we need to just drive it into recovery focused behaviours, right?
Yeah. Which do you think that, because I see this in athletes, I think one of the reasons why mine escalated so quickly, but also maybe why I found it kind of not easy to grab it by the horns. Once I decided I was getting better, that was it for me, wasn't it really? I was like, nah, this is it. I'm winning now. Yeah. And I think that's probably what made me get ill so quickly, maybe from such a young age, to keep it going for so long, to then almost be able to be like, no, okay, this is it, I'm done.
Your drive.
Can't, no more. And do you think that is, like you said, it can be really useful in some mentalities, but then also really detrimental in some other sides of your life? Yeah. How do you balance that? Because I'm still fighting that now. There's sides of me that's like, okay, this next venture I'm, heading into with the big wave stuff, I still have this athlete mind, or maybe not even athlete mind, maybe just Laura mind of being like, I'm going to do this because I want this. Yeah. And sometimes not thinking about all the other things that go along with it. That ability to tap in and out of those hardcore kind of traits and kind of just, I guess, watch them from above is something that I'm trying to do a little bit more. But how do you think that helps and hinders in recovery, would you say? Not being able to look from above.
I think that's what you're practicing in therapy, right? With your therapist, being honest and being able to zoom out and practice seeing the bigger picture. Because again, it's one of the things we target in treatment with thinking styles. people tend to be quite detail focused and really caught up in things and really rigid and inflexible. So along with nutrition and eating enough, the rigidity lessens and targeting those thinking styles and making people practice being flexible in routine and thought, and practicing seeing the bigger picture. Now, what you said isn't necessarily a bad thing to be driven and ambitious, you know, especially with athletes and people who are driven, like really driven to achieve in certain ways. I think it's knowing your personality, how that works for you, pros and cons wise, and knowing when to apply it. Yeah. It's a discipline, right? It's mastering when is this good for me to apply and when is it not? Like, is it going towards something helpful for me or something harmful? So if it's harmful, it's going towards an eating disorder behaviour, right? In the context of therapy, it's going to make me feel bad about myself, it's going to take me back into a behaviour. If I'm applying my drive in a helpful way, it's towards something recovery focused or towards something that's going to make me feel good about myself, right? It's going to enrich my life or a nourishing behaviour. So when it's like the big wave stuff, you know, and taking risks and doing that in a very calculated way that you would do, or your intuitive sense as a surfer kicks in, you know that you're applying that in a way that's good for you.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's not then it's knowing this. It's knowing this is part of my personality that does like to push and strive, but I need to keep an eye on that and have healthy boundaries around it. And
also that, I mean, I probably need a therapy session on this anyway, but as we're here, because it's that thing that I feel like I'm doing a little bit at the moment. Is obviously I'm training a lot more than I was maybe 2 months ago, because I'm really in this now, like the season's kind of like upon us. Now I have this knowledge of overworking out and under-eating and restricting my eating when it comes to stress. I have seen those things definitely come up here and there, because it is a familiar place that I've been in that has felt uncomfortable in the past. And it's weird for me to actually watch my own Instagram stories and be like, well, you probably didn't need to do that extra workout today, and actually kind of be my own therapist now and try to recognize the, you know, when I'm pushing it a bit too much and I'm doing it to actually like almost hurt myself rather than to get myself into a position I need to be in. But that's like a balance that I guess will always kind of be...
Keep an eye on.
Yeah, right? I'm not... Sometimes I worry that I'm going backward steps by, you know, training super hard again and these things, because I'm nervous. There's a side of me that's nervous to fall back into that kind of like hole, I suppose.
So that's your self-awareness kicking in, right? Your reflective work that you've done, and that's good, because it's like becoming your own therapist is a beautiful phrase. It's essentially what I want from my clients, right? I want you to go away and internalise all the work we've done and kind of think like, okay, I am my own therapist now, I know how to do this. You can always obviously come back and check in with people that care for you, your therapist, other people, having healthy limits and boundaries, and just having that reflective practice of once a week to check in, like, what was my intention behind that workout? You know, how did it make me feel? Or am I overdoing it? So what's going on? So kind of knowing like what potential triggers might be, what behaviours might be coming in that show a little bit of relapse behaviour, you know, and grading that, be doing a traffic light system where you're like green, amber, red, so you kind of know, what does it look like when I'm in green? What does it look like when I'm going into amber and red? What am I doing with my thoughts? What am I doing with my behaviours? What am I doing with my eating? What my workouts like? And that helps you just keep an eye on things, you know. Sharing it with someone as well helps you stay on track. But like you say, it's a balance, right? So you're learning healthy limits, which is a good thing, right? So it's like learning to drive is how I like in therapy. You're with your instructor, you get an hour a week, and then it's in between you're practicing all the things you're learning, you consolidate your learning, you're off learning to drive, right? And now you're off, like, you know, your L plates are off and you're in life and you're just doing your thing and going, all right, so I need to remember, how do I do this turn or whatever, or parallel park, I don't do it so often. And the fact you've got that awareness and you're doing bigger picture thinking is great, it's fantastic, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of what I always say to people, like when people say, oh, when did you get rid of bulimia? I'm like, well, I feel like I'm always in recovery. I'm always recovering, you know, and learning parts of what that part. Yeah, okay, I wouldn't say that I'm bulimic anymore, which is like a beautiful thing to be able to say, honestly, truthfully. But that feeling of, like, I feel like I'm always going to be in recovery. I'm always like growing and always trying to get better. And I don't know, there's no end to this, I feel like, almost, which is beautiful. Whereas I always used to want an end. Whereas now I'm like, no, I'm kind of open with it. Like, I'm happy for it to just be an open-ended book that I just keep getting more aware of myself, right?
Yeah,
That's kind of what we're
like,
all doing here.
You're busy living life now, right? You're road testing all the stuff you learned in therapy and applying it in life, and you only get to do that through going off and living life now and achieving the things that wasn't letting you achieve before, and doing things.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. And also knowing there might be times when you're vulnerable and it might pop back up, or you might have urges to do things, and now you'll be able to notice and have the skills to not do those things or respond to them differently now, right?
Definitely.
There'll be a response rather than a reaction.
Yeah.
But absolutely, like if it's like if someone's anxious or they've treated an anxiety, it might pop up now and again, but it doesn't mean like you're way back at the beginning.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You're just like, okay, I know how to handle this. You know.
Yeah, it's true. Right now you're doing a therapy session across the table with 15-year-old Omara.
Oh.
I know, isn't it? I think it was so cute. What one piece of advice would you give to that girl?
It's a good question, right? What one piece? Just one piece? Oh my goodness. She needs many. I think believe in yourself, know your worth, and know that you can do anything that you put your mind to. You have what it needs. You've everything that you need to succeed, you already have inside you, So just know your worth.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. I saw that in you. That's what I saw. When I was like, this strong woman, she knows what's up.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for
you,
today,
Laura.
honestly, and for every day. But yeah, you're incredible, and I think that what you do is incredibly selfless. So thanks for everything.
Oh, that's so kind.
If anything in today's podcast has triggered or just made you maybe think that you would like to speak to somebody, under this video I'm going to put links to everything that Omara has mentioned today, so from any information from Beat, or just links to find somebody to speak to, whether that's Omara or somebody else. But yeah, please do not feel alone. We are all in this together. And yeah, thank you, Omara, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.